What's up, everybody? So, pretty quick video here about how to aim train without using an aim trainer, and this will be Valorant specific edition because I know that there's lots of people that don't really like using the aim trainers, and they hear a lot of pros not be too favorable about them, which makes sense because the pros didn't get good, most of them, by using aim trainers, because aim trainers are really new, and how to use them effectively is also pretty new knowledge. And there's a lot of pros that are actually getting on that train now. But with that said, Valorant, how do we look at improving our aim in the game? Because unlike Counter-Strike, we don't really have any good tools for aim training, to be honest. It's very limited. So the first place to start with is we have to zoom out and we have to look from the top down and see what we've got. Valorant is a game which has only a few different game modes. So you've got deathmatch and you've got team deathmatch, which are pretty suitable ones for warm-up. Then you've got customs, which maybe you play scrims in, or 10 mans, whatever. And then you've also got ranked. And then lastly, you've got firing range. We'll ignore the other game modes that they have that are kind of like very kind of, just basic. So with all of that said, let's break down our approach. So given that there are only certain games and modes to play, whenever we're playing ranked, it's probably not a good place to start with regards to aim training because there's too many things going on. So the only value that we can really get from ranked, because also those reps are really precious, we don't want to spend time focusing on aim training when we're supposed to be trying to win and improving our decision making, all the rest of it. But what we can do is we can extract a lot of value from ranked, because it is really important to play ranked and to play customs and to not lose. And to not lose, we have to make sure that we hit our shots. And so if you're noticing that there are particularly difficult shots for you, then you can start to take note of, maybe I should, focus on trying to train this to improve it. So maybe it's like click timing, people coming around the corner, and you either click too early or too late, but you're clicking basically not when they're behind your crosshair. That's a problem, because a lot of shots in this game are, you waiting on the other side of a corner, someone's swinging out, and you've got a better angle or whatever it might be, and you have to just shoot them. Or there are situations where you'll have someone that's like running across your screen, they won't even notice you. You need to be able to flick ahead of your target and then just click when they cross through your crosshair. It's a free kill. So there are these types of kills that are definitely pretty guaranteed that you should be hitting. So what you want to do is you might have to jerry rig things a little bit, but you want to be focusing on finding ways to practice the thing that's wrong. So obviously that's always important. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's look at the other things that we've got going on. So other than ranked, which we've now decided that it's a good place for us to at least understand where we're weak, we can look at, our approach to warm up in general, or skills training in general. Usually I would say most people kind of just really bucket things in two places, like one warm up and one just playing. And so because we've already talked about the playing bucket, in the warm up bucket, I would say there are three big things that you can do. One is technique or skills work. The other one is generalized warm up, and then the third one is mental warm up. These are the three big ones, I would say. So with regards to the technique work, as we just identified, maybe we said, oh, I have an issue with my micro corrections. So you could try to jerry rig this and try to basically, allow them to flick and then kind of micro correct, really focusing on the target and trying to make sure that you get a good micro correction. And I'm just trying to take note if you're over flicking or under flicking, or if you're trying to shoot too fast. You could just, one thing you can do here is just react off of their, like when they stop, just try to react after their movement. And sometimes they kind of strafe a bit more quickly than others, but here I'm able to kind of practice that kind of reactive micro correction, which is a good skill. And also, you're potentially practicing some click timing as well, because this is kind of similar to a dynamic clicking task, as they pass through your crosshair. But generally here I would say, I like using it to just practice the reactive micro correction, because you're also in a situation where in game this happens quite a lot, that you'll be finding a player and they're going to be having sort of like erratic movement, maybe AD, they're moving around. You're not entirely sure which way they're going to go necessarily, but you just want to kind of be able to react with a micro correction after initially flicking to them. And you want to try to hit confirm too. One thing that people tend to do with this is they'll just flick and then just shoot, but try to actually like hit confirm, because you'll be surprised at how good you can get at that. And then what ends up happening is you end up being a lot more consistent on your shots. So, okay, so we looked at one example here where like this could be technique work, where we're really trying to drill into how am I moving? Am I over flicking? Am I under flicking? How can I, like, what is a better technique? What do I have to kind of adjust here? And usually a better technique is really just trying to solve these problems. And again, this is why aim trainers are so good. It's because you can find a scenario that will isolate a certain skill for pretty much any skill you're going to come across at this point. You know, particularly, you know, going to give a shout out to Low Gravity 56 because he has contributed so many tasks so that I can actually say that. And I think it's fairly true that there's essentially a task for pretty much everything now. So with that said, you're trying to essentially do that here by you know, using, you know, the firing range in whatever way that it could be applicable. So that's one example, but of technique work, right? And okay, let's talk about the generalized warm-up and what we're doing with generalized warm-up. So actually, before I do that, this is a really big and important thing that you must understand about skills work or technique work. So one of the most important things about this is it has to be intentional. And you can see that the process was fairly intentional, the way that I was describing, like what we're focusing on and having this very singular focus on how the ways we're noticing the technique is lackluster and then how we're trying to improve it so it becomes higher quality. So as we're trying to improve our technique, the way that we do this is it's ideally through a high frequency of high quality repetitions of the new technique that we want. The reason for this is because we have to reinforce in our brain the new thing until it becomes intuitive, the new normal. Because if we don't do that, what tends to happen is we just get reps on the same technique we were already using, which means that the results will be the same or they will be limited in the same way. So this is the same thing with any type of behavior adjustment. You have to be intentional. You have to have a process whereby you observe your behavior and then you say to yourself, okay, I want my behavior to be like this. Okay, so then you have to figure out, well, how do I get to that? Well, it's probably by doing a bunch of different things and with consistency that creates the new behavior. And that, you know, you have to keep going. You have to keep it going. Otherwise, you slip into the old and bad habits, which we don't want, because then you're not going to improve. I had a really great podcast with Metadoc where he's a specialist in learning effectively, and we talked about accelerated learning. So if you want to get some good principles for how to learn things quickly, then I definitely recommend that episode. It's really good. Okay, so we covered that with technique work, and oh, by the way, I should cap this off by saying a lot of players plateau with their aim because they put in all of the hours. But if you put in all of the hours, it is helpful to improve, but you can only improve insofar as you have the potential to improve. Everything is capped. And if your technique is poor and you haven't adjusted what's wrong with it, but you just try to execute the same thing, but the same thing that's bad, you can't execute the same thing that's bad better really than it is. What you can do is if you have a very high quality technique, you can execute that really to a high degree or to a high outcome that is favorable, high quality outcome that's favorable because it's really good technique. So its ceiling's really high. What happens to a lot of players is they just don't realize how to adjust their technique and how to train that. And so they just get stuck at a certain plateau with their aiming. So and I've seen this happen with lots of players where there's just like some stuff that's just a clear no-go, but they just don't understand what's missing. And so instead of, they can make leaps and bounds of improvement within a very short time if they just knew the right corrections. So you don't want to be stuck in that kind of a place. Okay, so that kind of caps that off properly. So next thing is the generalized warm-up. So generalized warm-up is this idea that we just want to feel warm. Like this is genuine warm-up. I want to practice, you know, feeling good with my counter strafe. I want to practice feeling good with like two bullet bursts, you know, and deathmatch is a pretty good place for this because it's a dynamic environment. And I want to practice like 10 kills with my three bullet bursts. You know, I want to practice with this weapon. I want to practice with the Phantom. You know, I want to practice with this or that. You know, just going through movement and weapons and different aiming styles, just trying to cycle through as many things as possible that you may be wanting to feel comfortable with in the playing session you're about to start. That's what the generalized warm-up tends to be. Its goal is not to improve your technique, because as we just described, the technique work is quite specific in terms of how we look at our technique and then how we try to control for the improved and better technique. And you can notice that in the generalized warm-up, I said nothing about that. I just said, just pull out the weapons and the techniques that, the stuff that's already in your tool belt, pull that stuff out and just cycle through it. And so that it all feels kind of good and loose, So then the last thing I would say is a mental game warm-up. I used to call this emotional warm-up, but they're kind of essentially effectively the same thing, because the mental game is ultimately an emotional battle. And with the mental game warm-up, it's the idea that you want to, you can slap some music on if you want. You want to be having fun. You want to feel good and confident. You pull out your comfort weapons, start owning people, just like whatever, like, start spinning around, like whatever it is that just makes you kind of feel like awesome in the game. And just do that. And then also it's a good space to go over that code of conduct that you have with yourself. So I would always have my goals in mind, because I would want to have a practice session with high quality that is directed in the way I want to go as a player. So I would have specific goals for the practice session. Which I would be in my mind. I would have my code of conduct, or what I would call the champion's mindset, which is about how you handle adversity, how you take ownership for things, how you're always in problem solving mode. Everything is a problem where you're finding a solution. The reason why it's really important to have like these super high quality operating standards is because it dictates, if you are intentionally focused on this every day you play and you get to be consistent with it, that is what you will become. To become consistent, you must practice consistency. And so to do so, you need to set up what that means, and then you have to adhere to it. And then you have to just keep going and keep optimizing the process, and keep understanding that it's a process that you need to think, okay, what situation harms the quality of my practice? Okay, this harmed the quality of my practice. I tilted. How can I stop the tilt? How can I remove the tilt? How can I work on the tilt? And then you fix that. And you just keep going on this process until you just keep raising the standard over time. As you experience things that either made the quality of the practice better or worse. Did I achieve the goals that I had for this practice, whatever they might have been? Okay. With all of that said, I think that kind of covers it, really. We've got essentially our understanding of where we can do our aim training. Like technique work is one of the places that we'll do it. We haven't really talked about the durations of these things. How much time should you spend on these different things? I personally think that anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes on the technique work is more than enough. If you're doing, if this is happening 4 to 5 times a week. I would say though that you have to kind of understand if it's working for you or not, because everybody is a little bit different. So what you want to, so what is actually better for me to say is, what do you want to kind of see be the result from this? Because this is another mistake I see people making, whereby they don't understand what the result is supposed to be and when they are supposed to have it. So for example, they may end up giving up on their aim training because they don't understand what the result is supposed to look like and whether and by when. And so this means that if they get a week in, maybe they were supposed to see a result in 3 days, realistically speaking, and they're a week in and they're like, I don't know what's going on. And then they just stop training entirely. Whereas if they understood that, oh, I'm a week in and I haven't had a result and I'm supposed to have it by 3 days, I need to change something. There's something that I'm not doing right. And so I think giving you as a sense as to what you're trying to do here is really important, so that you can kind of tweak it and not just feel like you're out there in the dark. So when it comes to the technique work, you need to be able to kind of have a feeling, a genuine feeling of when you're, let's say, taking a mistake from the match, and then cycling that into something you work on in your technique work, then you want to actually feel like it's improving in the game, like, because it will feel different. It will feel like you're either doing the same thing over and over and over again, or something is changing. And if nothing is changing, you might have to take a more aggressive approach to the technique work. You may have to spend more time on it. That could be something that you end up doing. Maybe you end up playing less ranked games that day, and you spend a lot more time doing technique work. Maybe the 10-15 minutes isn't enough. So this is what you need to really understand is if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, you can get them. You just have to figure out what are you doing incorrectly, because that's what will happen. Don't just hold your hands up and just stop training altogether. Figure the only acceptable result there is that you decide that that is no longer important to you as a goal, or you fix it. Those are your two options, because those are the two honest options. Because a lot of the time, what giving up is giving up is a person that wants to actually achieve a goal, but they just decide, even though it's still important to them, that they're just not going to try anymore. So they're going to feel sad about that because they're going to feel like a failure. So what you can do is, just be honest with yourself. Is that what's happening? Or is it that it genuinely didn't become important to you? Because if it's no longer important to you, then that's fine. But if something's important to you, this is my message really. Don't accept no for an answer in this scenario. Find out what the mistake is and then go and correct it. Okay. So this is a lot of just talking to you whilst watching these strafing bots. So I hope this was useful for some of you guys. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know, and I'll just make some video follow-ups, because I think a lot of these questions are really helpful to other people. And if we need a lot more specific examples on things, I can also get that extra research in for you guys if necessary. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.